What is up, Pitt fans? Thank you so much for tuning in to Inside the Panthers on YouTube. My name is Stephen Thompson. Here with my partner, Jack Markowski. I'm coming to you live from the Peterson Event Center, where the Pitt Panthers just knocked off NC State by a final score of 81-73. It's senior night. They honored KJ Marshall, Will Jefferson, and Blake Hinson prior to the game, and then they proceeded to really outplay NC State for most of this game. They finish off the regular season with a win. They finish off their home slate with a win. The Panthers have not lost since, I believe, they lost the second game to Syracuse earlier in January. So the Panthers are rolling right now. They keep things rolling. But tonight was really all about one man, one guy who has been one of the faces of this program for the past couple of years. He is definitively the face of it this year. His arrival in Pittsburgh coincided with a complete program renaissance, and all of the winning that has happened over the past two seasons has really emanated from him. It was Blake Hinson's night. He had another, vintage game. He scored 21 points, 8 of 16 from the field, grabbed 3 rebounds, and dealt out 2 assists as well. It was certainly an emotional night for a lot of people, for the Pitt fans mostly. I mean, for Hinson, it seemed like it was kind of just another game. But what did you notice about Hinson's last game in the Peterson Event Center? And, what does it say about him as a player?
Yeah, so he finished with 21 points. And I think the funny thing about that is, you look at the box score and that sticks out. But if you watch the game, it didn't really feel that way. And I mean that in a good way, honestly. He was 8 of 16 shooting with 2 threes. And I think the fact that, he could put up a quiet 21 points, if you will, says a lot about what he's been this year. It was more of the same. Honestly, it was the perfect way to go out in front of the Oakland Zoo at the Pete on senior night, like you said, doing what he does best. He was driven off the perimeter a little bit, only shot 6 threes, which, you're used to him taking 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. But I also thought he was good driving to the basket. He converted around the rim a little bit more than he has in the past couple games. Turned it up in the second half, was 6 of 10 shooting, 14 points, which did give the Panthers some cushion against that NC State comeback that got a little too close for their liking, probably. And I also thought that he had some quality defensive possessions, especially against CJ Burns. There were 1 or 2 times where he backed him down in the paint and he held his own, and he was steady all around. He also had some nice playmaking moments. There was an assist of Federico in the first half, on an alley-oop that stood out as, I think, one of the best passes I've seen him make at Pitt. So, yeah, I think he adjusted. He wasn't necessarily as aggressive as he has been all season. And I think that's, a case of some of his teammates stepping up around him. He didn't have to, be the only guy, the only source of offense all night. And I think he's continually improved with the extra pressure sent his way, which was also a factor tonight, as it has been for most of ACC play. There's been times where teams have taken him out of games, but he's found ways to work around it. Like he did tonight, he still got his looks. He remained effective. And, I think it was a perfect ending to his career at home at Pitt. He continued cementing his status as an all ACC first team lock. He showed why he can carry this Pitt team on any given night, especially in March. And especially now with some of his teammates stepping up around him, so the pressure isn't squarely on him. So, yeah, I think it was a strong performance. Wasn't explosive necessarily, but he did, everything you expect him to do on a nightly basis.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it was, like you said, you look at the box score and it looks like a pretty typical night for Blake, a typical good night for Blake. But, the feeling that you got, the eye test made it feel like not a very Blake game. In a certain sense, it was like he was there to enjoy it, like it was his last night and he was there to just kind of watch his team win without him, not necessarily win without him, I guess, but to win with him as a secondary guy, like it was almost him passing the torch a little bit, him saying, I'm leaving this building for the last time. This isn't going to be about me anymore. It's going to be about Bub, who scored 23 points tonight. It's going to be about Jalen Lowe, who had a rough night, but I thought did some good things running the offense. It's going to be about, Fetty, who's still here, giving you 8 points, 9 rebounds. Leggett giving you 9 points off the bench and 8 rebounds as well. It was about other guys. He felt like he wanted to make it about other guys tonight, in part, I think, because there's also some more work to do. You know, it was his last game at the Peterson Event Center, but this is certainly not Blake's last game as a Panther, and there are certainly more meaningful ones to come. And I think that's what he kind of felt too. He enjoyed playing tonight, but he enjoyed it because he was watching these guys that he cares about succeed, and because his team won, and because he knows that because they won, there's a lot more on the horizon. I was expecting a little bit more emotion tonight, to be quite honest with you. I was expecting, you know, someone to get choked up during senior night. I was expecting there to be, you know, a final call off for Blake where he gets subbed out and he gets a big standing ovation. I was expecting him in the post-game press conference to be really emotional, and he wasn't. He was very stoic. He was the same guy. It might as well have been, you know, a mid-January game against, or a mid-December game against a low major. And Blake didn't really seem to treat it any differently. That said, Jeff Capel, it took right up until Jeff Capel's last answer in the post-game press conference for him to really, you know, get choked up a little bit and think about what Blake has meant to this program. And, you know, Jeff had plenty of nice things to say as well, but I think the one that stood out to me most was what he said about Blake being grateful, you know, Blake being grateful for this place, for this opportunity. I mean, I think when you look at it now, you know, it's easy to say Blake is this immensely talented player and he gave Pitt so much, you know, why would Pitt not have wanted him? But this was a two-way street, you know. Pitt didn't really have much to offer Blake, at least from the outside looking in, when he arrived here. And Blake didn't really have much on his resume when Pitt wanted him, when he was being recruited by Pitt and came here. This was a relationship where the two sides had to really trust each other when there wasn't a ton of tangible evidence that it was going to be a relationship that worked out, or one that led to what we've seen over the past 2 years. And I think that's where a lot of Jeff Capel's love for Blake, and where a lot of Blake's love for this place and for Jeff Capel and for the rest of the program comes from. It's from a place of wow, you didn't really have much of a reason to trust me and believe in me, and you did anyway. And look at what we've done because of that. Jeff Capel's success is intertwined with Blake's. Blake's success is intertwined with Jeff Capel's, and those two are going to be linked for a long time. And it's a remarkable thing to see. And you know, I think they don't want to see it end. And I think that's why everyone was in such a good mood, because they knew that it wasn't ending so soon. Moving on a little bit, talking about, you know, what's next. Like I said, Bub Carrington had another great night tonight. He's been playing really, really well for this team over his past 4 games. He's averaging 16 points per game, 3.3 assists, 5.3 rebounds per game, shooting 50% from 3 on 6 attempts, which is a pretty high volume. And he's also shooting 50% from the field as a whole. He's been tremendous. He's also doing this while I think playing some really good defense as well. What do you think's kind of clicking for Bub recently, and why do you think he's riding this hot streak right now that he is?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference, you know, in terms of him being a scorer is his 3-point shooting, undoubtedly. You know, I think you look at how he played at the beginning of ACC play, even the middle, where, you know, he might make 1 or 2 threes a night. He was not super efficient. He's completely, you know, turned around. He's become their second most reliable shooter, I would say. He's become a lot more confident, a lot more comfortable. You know, I think there were times early in the season where he would pass up an open look from behind the arc for, you know, a pull-up mid-range, which, you know, he's efficient at. That's one of his better spots on the floor. But him becoming a scorer that can really hurt opposing teams at all levels makes all the difference in the world for Pitt. We've seen it recently. Of course, you know, he's put up 18 points against Clemson, 27 against BC, then 23 tonight on 8 of 15 shooting, shot 53%. And, you know, this is the Bub Carrington that, you know, we saw flashes early in the season in the non-con, you know, and it's only until recently that he's really turned it up in the ACC. He's become just so more effective in getting to the rim too. As we saw tonight, he's getting to his spots effortlessly, hitting pull-up triples, mid-range. You know, really the talent is immense. You know, it makes you excited for the future. You know, who knows how much longer he'll be here. That's a different discussion. But he's the full package, honestly. You know, he isn't forcing bad shots. There's still a lot of ISO ball to his game, but that's not a bad thing. I think it's warranted for a guy like him who can go out there, exploit a mismatch, recognize it, attack it, and open up a look for himself or a teammate. which hasn't always been the case. I think the growth that we've seen within the season, much like his fellow freshman guard and Jalen Lowe, has just been, it's been immense. Honestly, I don't think, if you told me that this was the player that he would be all around in the middle of ACC play, beginning of ACC play, I would believe you, even though he's shown flashes, early in the season. So, I think everything is there, along with defense, playmaking, rebounding. He had 6 assists tonight, 5 rebounds, only 1 turnover. That experience has made all the difference in the world. And we're really, seeing, who Carrington is as a player, who we've thought he could be as a player all along. And I think it's coming at the perfect time too.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think I think I agree with a lot of what you said, but I think you really hit the nail on the head with, he's not forcing stuff. He's getting to spots more easily. He is becoming a 3-level scorer. I think it starts with the 3-pointers. He's shooting them off the pass more. He's a catch and shoot guy from 3 a lot more than he is a taking threes off the dribble type of guy. He loves those mid-range jumpers and he shoots them really efficiently, but he's picking his spots more on where to shoot them. When he gets to the middle of the lane, it feels like he's looking to kick out a little bit more. He's looking for options there. He's keeping his dribble alive. And then obviously, like you said, he's attacking the rim a little bit more. I just think he's so much smarter. He has learned so much, as he told us in the post-game press conference, through these experiences that he's had, playing as a freshman, kind of taking those lumps early, and learning some lessons. I don't think it's any coincidence also that the fact that Jalen Lowe has become a much more, established and capable lead point guard. It's not all on Bub to initiate every part of offense. I think Bub is a really good is a good point guard, really good 2 guard, in my opinion. So I think that dynamic has opened up a lot of things for him as well. And then he feeds off the defense as well. Like when he is able to get a defensive stop, when he blocks a shot, when he contests really well, I think that gives him energy. And I think that gives him confidence, and confidence is so big for him. He told us that as well. It's just, he doesn't feel like he's doing anything different mechanically, or that he's, changed his approach. He's just a little more confident right now, and especially over these last few games. And it's really done massive things for Pitt. There was a while where, it was really just Blake Hinson and Ish Leggett who were doing most of the scoring for the Panthers. And, then you add in, Carrington started to fall off a little bit. He wasn't really there as a scorer. Then you got Jalen Lowe in there, who kind of replaced him. And now Pitt has 4 guys that can create shots off the bounce, that can get to the rim, that can shoot threes pretty effectively. And that's a big difference for them. It really does change a lot for them, makes them so much more dangerous, and it's why they're so much harder to guard and why they've been winning a bunch of games recently. It hasn't just been Carrington who's been riding a hot streak, especially offensively. The entire team has really been on their P's and Q's as far as shooting the ball, and as far as efficiency, and as far as running the offense. The Panthers have shot 50% or better from the field in 3 of their last 4 games. They've only done it 7 times all year, and over the past 2 weeks, they've done it 3 times. Jack, what do you see from the offense right now? What's clicking? What's working? Are they facing bad defenses, or are the Panthers doing something that makes their offense more effective?
I think it all comes down to ball movement and guys stepping up, sort of like we said with Carrington. I don't think it's a coincidence that the offense, reaching a new level coincides with Jalen Lowe breaking out and Carrington breaking out. Even guys like Federico have become more effective. Guillermo Diaz-Graham is shooting more consistently from behind the arc in ACC play. I think you look at some of their performances early in ACC play, coming from an opposite direction. Like they shot 30% against UNC, 37.5% against Miami, 35.4 against Syracuse, 32.8 against Duke. And I think just, what we saw, the malaise, how stagnant they were during those times, during those games, is completely gone. And I think it comes down to, the ball having more energy, if you will. I think there's a lot more off-ball movement. I think there's more chemistry and more connectivity on that side of the ball. When you're getting guys who are shooting, alongside Hinson, there's more options from behind the arc. In the paint too, I think it's back-to-back games now with 40 points in the paint, which is unheard of, for a team with little interior scoring presence, at least from their big men. That's a huge step up. They can hurt you from all over the floor. There's not really an answer, especially when you have 3-4 guys on any given night who can go out and give you, 15 points, 20 points. And that's a big step up. It's a big deal from where they were when, Hinson was the only consistent option they had on that side of the floor. So I think it's just all about growth. Like I've said multiple times, it just comes down to there being more of that sort of feel on offense. And yeah, I think it really is just working for better looks, the growth of some of the supplementary pieces, turning into, quality second options, third options, even main options when Hinson isn't on. So, it's become more of a team game on that side of the ball when that wasn't always the case. I think that bodes well for what they're going to do down the stretch here too.
I agree. The ball has had more energy. They are moving the ball a lot better, but I think these Panthers are also they're responding to defensive game plans. This is a team that I think everyone knows relies really heavily on the 3-point shot at certain times to a fault. But I think the Panthers are finding multiple ways to score now. We talked about, Bub Carrington being able to get to the rim a little bit more, but Blake Hinson has grown as a guy who can drive and get to the rim and create plays that way. And then on top of that, you have Ish Leggett and Jalen Lowe, who in fact make most of their living inside the arc, either from the mid-range or by getting to the rim. And that's coupled with both, I think, Guillermo Diaz-Graham and Federico both finding ways to finish around the rim a little bit better. I think that had been a glaring deficiency for them earlier in the year, up until I'd say, two-thirds of the way through the season. And all of a sudden, I think today was a great example of it. They were really effective finishing around the rim. They finished lobs that I don't think they finished at the beginning of the year. They had offensive rebounds that they put back really effectively that I don't think they would have done as effectively earlier in the year. I think the growth of those two guys in the front court has really opened up a lot of things. I said this during the game. I put it out on Twitter, but Pitt did not have a playable center for the first half of ACC play. Now they have two, and these guys aren't necessarily all ACC caliber guys, but they're doing what you want them to do, what you need them to do when you're a team that's built around two guards and a forward. They're in the right spot, they're doing the right things, and they don't have to do much. So it makes their jobs easier, and it really opens up a lot of things for the rest of the team when they do their jobs effectively. We do got to talk about one member of the front court. There was actually some surprising news that came out this week. William Jefferson walked on senior day. He is only a redshirt junior, but did participate in senior day ceremonies. Jeff Capel told us that he had completed all of his coursework to graduate last semester, and he is waiting until this spring to officially walk and become a Pitt graduate. With that said, Jefferson does have 2 years of eligibility remaining. And then on top of that, we asked Jeff Capel in the postgame press conference, has Will given you any indication of what he wants to do next year? And Capel said that Will Jefferson has not told him anything one way or the other, whether he intends to transfer, leave basketball entirely, come back to Pitt. What do you make of this situation? It's a little odd. It's a little strange. But do you figure that Jefferson is going to be back in a Panthers uniform next year, or do you see him moving on, going somewhere else, doing something different?
Yeah, it's an interesting debate because, I know how much Will Jefferson means to this program, means to Jeff Capel. He told a story where after the 2021-2022 season where, they finished 11-21, 6-14 in the conference. Capel said there were a lot of guys that were leaving. The program was at, one of its lowest points in his tenure. And Will Jefferson made a point to go out of his way and tell him that he believed in him, that he was going to stick around. And Capel said that, he got emotional hearing him say that. So, I know there's a connection there. Jefferson means a lot to the program. Capel means a lot to him. I think it comes down to whether or not Will Jefferson, wants an opportunity to be a starter, if he wants to transfer down to, maybe a mid-major and get more playing time. I think there would be a roster spot available for him, but I just don't know if Pitt can guarantee him a bigger role than he has this season, where he's only playing 11 minutes a game. He is a spark plug. I think any team can use a player like him, a guy that, is a defensive enforcer. I think he can defend multiple positions. We saw the impact he can have in certain matchups, like against Efton Reed, against Wake Forest. But yeah, I don't think I think it is interesting that he walked on senior day. I know he hasn't announced his plans, but to me, it feels like he might be planning to move on again. That's, all speculation. So yeah, I think if he wants to come back, there will be a spot for him, but I would not be at all surprised if he decided to move on, play a little bit more. He gave this program 4 good years. He's had a big impact on their success. I don't think it would be surprising if he did decide to, try to put his name out there a little bit more, if you will, somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I almost expected that before we talked to Jeff Capel tonight. I expected him to say, yeah, Will's going to stick with us through the end of the season. He's going to, give his all, obviously, and contribute as much as he can. But he's told us that he plans to enter the transfer portal or whatever in the offseason. Like that wouldn't have shocked me at all. And I would have totally understood. And I don't think there would have been any hard feelings from anyone else in this Pitt program. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's not a huge role that he's in right now. I know this team appreciates what he brings, and he can be a spark plug. I mean, you think about it just this year. Pitt doesn't win that second Wake Forest game, or that first Wake Forest game, excuse me, without Will Jefferson's defense on Efton Reed, and you extrapolate from there, Pitt's probably not even sniffing the NCAA tournament bubble if they don't win that game. So you can trace this season, you can trace this second half run all the way back to Will Jefferson, what he did in the second half, in the final 10 minutes, really, of that game against Wake Forest. So a valuable player, obviously, but I totally would have understood if he wanted to move on. Like you said, I'm unsure now. I kind of expected walking on senior day means that, okay, this is my last game here. I'm kind of announcing to the world that I'm moving on, that I'm going to do something different. But as we know, the world of college athletics is very different than it was a long time ago. Jefferson has a lot of options on the table. I feel like I still kind of lean towards he'll move on, try to find a place to play, do some graduate school work, and just try to get a chance to play maybe at a different level and really get on the floor a little bit more. But I also feel like he likes Pitt. I think he likes Jeff Capel, and I think he likes being pretty close to home as well. So, while I'm not sure, I think I still lean towards the idea that he's going to eventually decide that he wants to move on and maybe just wants to keep it focused on the season at hand. He doesn't want to be a distraction at all, and is just kind of keeping that decision to himself for now as the Panthers try to round out the regular season and move on to the postseason, where there's some big things waiting for them. Speaking of those big things, the Panthers, they lock up the 4th seed in the ACC tournament with a win today. Clemson lost to Wake Forest, meaning the Pitt leapfrogged them before their game even finished, and then they locked up that 4th seed with the win. And then Virginia's win over Georgia Tech meant that they couldn't climb up into that 3rd seed. Those were all possibilities. They could have finished as high as 3rd. They could have fallen as far as 7th, but they meet a little bit in the middle, and they get that 4th seed. It's the highest finish for a Pitt team in the ACC since they joined about, I believe it's a decade now. It is 10 years ago since the first ACC season for Pitt. Highest finish since that time. You look at the bracket right now, the Panthers, they will have to wait a little bit. They wait until the quarterfinals on Thursday. They get a double bye. Notre Dame and Georgia Tech will play on the first day. They are the first game on Tuesday. After that, they will the winner of that game will play Wake Forest at 2:30 on Wednesday. And then the winner of that game against Wake Forest will move on to play Pitt in the quarterfinals. You look at Pitt's path to the tournament. They've got North Carolina waiting. If they are to win their Pitt's first game, what do you make of their path? Do the Panthers have a decent shot and making a run to that championship game and winning the whole thing, do you think?
I definitely think there's a chance. I think with some of the recent performances that they've put together, I think if they're on any given night, they can beat any team in the conference. We've already seen them beat the number 2 seed in Duke and the number 3 seed in Virginia this year. They have beat the number 5 seed in Wake Forest. So yeah, I do think it's a path that does favor Pitt. Wake Forest is a deep team. We've seen them. I mean, they demolished Pitt a couple weeks ago on their home floor. So if they do defeat the winner of Georgia Tech and Notre Dame, I do think that is a tough matchup for Pitt. But on the flip side, we saw them beat them at the Pete in January too. So I think if Pitt can win that game, move on to face UNC, like you said, I do think there's a chance that they could, maybe move on to the final, give a team like Duke a run for their money. I think this is, coming at the perfect time. Obviously, with the way that they finished the season, they're going to be determined, of course. They know what's on the line with a potential conference championship. Their at-large hopes, are still very much alive and do, hang or rely on what happens with them in the ACC tournament. So it should be an exciting time for Pitt. I expect them to be in a battle, whether it's in the quarterfinals, the semifinals, the final. I think they've set themselves up pretty well for success. Can go on a pretty deep run here.
I agree. And I think this is a completely different, notion than even getting the 3 seed. You look at kind of the teams that could have fallen into their lap. I mean, so if they had gotten up to that 3rd seed, they're probably playing Clemson in the second round or in their first game. And that's a matchup I really don't like. I mean, Clemson's beaten Pitt twice this year. That doesn't, I feel like you rarely see a team win that 3rd game after losing 2 in a row. I feel like after 2 games, you kind of know what a team is and you know what a matchup is. I like that Pitt gets Wake Forest, one more shot at Wake, who is not playing their best ball right now. Despite beating Clemson earlier today. But I do like that matchup a little bit better for Pitt. And then, looking ahead to even North Carolina, like I like the fact that they don't have to play Duke for a 3rd time. A Duke team that will definitely be out to get them, that will be angry, that will think about when Pitt beat them at Cameron Indoor Stadium. And then even that Virginia team, another team that could be hungry, that could be out for some revenge as well. I like that the North Carolina game, we're so far removed from that first one, which was a blowout victory for the Tar Heels. I think that does play to Pitt's favor because Pitt is playing like a different team right now. I think they absolutely have a chance to win it all, to be quite honest. I don't see a team in this field that Pitt cannot beat, especially the way that they're playing right now. There are obviously degrees to that, but Pitt absolutely has as just a good a chance as any of these top 4, maybe outside of North Carolina, to win the whole thing. The unfortunate thing is that Pitt would draw the 1 seed early, but I think if you ask Pitt, I think if you ask anyone who follows this team, I think their minds are wide open and everyone has the belief that, that first North Carolina game was not indicative of what this team can do right now, even against a top 10 team, maybe even a top 5 team heading into Washington, D.C. next week. Looking ahead a little bit more, I mean, the talk of the entire, past month or so has been what Pitt's odds of making the NCAA tournament are. Pitt finishes the year 21-10, the same record that they finished with last season. If you remember, most of their metrics though are better. They're higher in the net. They are higher in KenPom. What do you make of their NCAA tournament chances at this point? Do they have work left to do in DC? Or are they solidly in the field now? How do you look at it?
I think it's, just from without context, I think it's pretty crazy that we're talking about a 21-10 team that's 12-8 in the ACC, a top 4 team in the conference as, still a decent way down the bubble. I do think Pitt has a body of work that is tournament worthy. But the bubble is also, it's pretty bloated this year, and there were a lot of outcomes today that do help them, with Memphis losing, Villanova losing, TCU, Mississippi State further up. But on the flip side, there are other outcomes that have pushed them down. I know Joe Lunardi pushed him out of his next 4 out, but in general, a lot of bracketologists have them in their first 4 out or next 4 out. So, I think Pitt's in a pretty good situation. I do very much still feel like they control their own destiny. A win in the quarterfinal against a team like Wake Forest, if you win that game, I feel like you have to feel pretty confident going into Selection Sunday, depending on the amount of bid stealers or how other teams, in their area on the bubble perform. So, I think it's just, you have to give a lot of credit to this Pitt team for being the situation that they are. I think that they deserve to be a tournament team. But really it comes down to, their resume in the selection committee's eyes on how they finish their season.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we don't know what the selection committee is thinking. Joe Lunardi's not on there. Mike DeCourcy's not on there. Jerry Palm is not on there. All these bracketologists that we see putting stuff out week after week, hour after hour, sometimes day after day. They are not the people who, at the end of the day, are determining who is in that NCAA tournament field. History, I think, would tell you that the Panthers are in, or that they at least are very close to in. I look at it as very similar to last year. I think one more win puts you definitely in the field. You lose, and I think you need some help. I don't think you're necessarily out, but you are real far from in. We talked about this a little bit. Would it have been nicer to get that only single bye, get a chance to beat, a Georgia Tech, or a Notre Dame, maybe get a double-digit win, raise that net rating, really look impressive, and then move on from there. But I still kind of look at this the same way. I mean, Wake is certainly a beatable team. I mean, that's assuming that you get them and not a Georgia Tech or a Notre Dame. But Pitt can certainly, I think, play their way solidly into the field. I don't know how much a loss would drop them, but if you want to leave nothing up to chance, I think you got to win. You got to win that quarterfinal game and at least make a run to the semifinals, and then who knows what happens from there. That's it. If they win 2 games, if they win multiple games in DC, they are absolutely in. You win 1, I think you give yourself a great chance. Win none, and I think you're really, really sweating it out and probably giving yourself not a great chance, in my opinion. But with that, we're going to head out of here. There's a lot left to determine before we get to the NCAA tournament, and there's a lot of time left between now and next time the Panthers play, because they have earned a double bye in the ACC tournament. They will next play on next Thursday afternoon at 2:30 against one of Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, or Wake Forest. Official tip-off time and TV designation to be determined. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about it, to preview the matchup, and see how the dominoes fall in the ACC tournament. With that, we're going to head out of here. Thank you all so much for tuning into another Inside Pitt post-game report. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/@InsideThePanthers, and follow all our reporting at InsideThePanthers.com. I'll be down in DC for the ACC tournament. I'm leaving in just a couple hours, but I will see you all down there. Appreciate you all tuning in again, and we'll see you next time.